Hey everybody, I'm going to be gone today, so I wanted to help you finish your Bill of Rights notes before we move on to play a little game for the second half of class. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and get out that sheet of paper that you started taking notes on yesterday, and we're going to go ahead and finish up the rest of the amendments of the Bill of Rights. We're going to jump into the Fifth Amendment. If you already have this, you can fast forward to the part on the Sixth Amendment. But really quick, the Fifth Amendment says that you have a right to a jury trial. The Fifth Amendment says there can be no double jeopardy. Double jeopardy means you can't be charged with the same crime twice. You also can't be made to testify against yourself. So that's why they read you what's called the Miranda rights when you're arrested. A lot of times you'll see police officers do this when they arrest someone on TV. They always say you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Do you understand these rights? Have I read them to you? I think that's pretty much how it goes. But they read you those rights so that way you know that you don't have to say anything unless you have a lawyer present. You know that you don't have to incriminate yourself. Pleading the fifth is another way that people can avoid testifying against themselves. So that means if you are on trial and you are testifying, you can't be forced to say anything that makes you look guilty or incriminates you. So if you're accused of a crime and you're on the witness stand and they say, "Did you do it?" you can plead the fifth, where you just say, "I plead the Fifth Amendment," or "I take the fifth." And that means I don't answer that question because it might incriminate me. Now, it doesn't make you look good to do that, but that way you can't be made under oath to say, "Yes, I did it." Fifth Amendment also guarantees due process, which means you basically get a fair trial, which we'll explain a little bit more in the Sixth Amendment. And Fifth Amendment also says that if property is taken from a citizen for public use, that citizen is required to get fair compensation for it. Now, this doesn't happen very often, but it can happen if the government has a large product or project that they think is for public use or for the larger public good. They can take land or property from a person. Great example would be when they built the interstate highway system. That land belonged to someone else first. So the government had to take that land and they were required to pay the people that owned the land previously a fair wage or a fair compensation for that land. Moving on to the Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment just lists all the parts of a fair trial that people are entitled to. So you are required to get a speedy trial, meaning that they can't arrest you and just keep you in jail forever. They have to set court dates and keep the trial moving along. That doesn't mean that you'll get arrested on Monday and have a trial on Tuesday. They'll space things out a little bit for your own benefit, really, so that way you have a chance to plan your defense. But the trial needs to keep moving. They can't just, arrest you and say, we'll get around to your trial eventually. They have to tell you, when court dates are going to happen. You have the right to an impartial jury, meaning that there's a jury selection process so that people don't end up with jurors that are very biased against them or biased for them. It needs to be a jury that ideally doesn't have a bias in this case. You have the right to a local judge and jury, meaning if you're accused of a crime in Johnson County, the trial happens in Johnson County. Sometimes trials will get moved, but not very often. It would have to be a case where it was a very public trial or the case had already been in the papers for a long time. And then you could go to the judge and say, everybody already knows all the details about my case. I don't think I could get a fair trial here because people have already made up their minds as to whether or not I'm guilty or innocent. And if the judge believes you that, this is in the news everywhere and too many people in this area know about it, then they might let you move your trial somewhere else. But that doesn't happen very often. Charges have to be made known against you. You have to know what you're accused of. As the defendant, you get to hear what the witnesses against you say, and you get to question them. So you get to cross-examine those witnesses, and then you get to be represented by an attorney. For the Seventh Amendment allows for civil cases. So there's criminal cases, which is mainly what we've been talking about so far. Civil cases, a lot of times would be where you would maybe sue someone. A lot of those cases would fall under civil court. Now, the main difference one of the big differences is in criminal court, if you're found guilty, you might face jail time or a fine. In civil cases, if you're found guilty, you don't face jail time, but you do have to pay out money, usually to the person that brought the case up against you. The other thing the Seventh Amendment says is that a judge can't overrule a jury's decision. So if you're found not guilty, the judge can't say, the jury got it wrong, you're actually guilty. But there are some cases where a person is found guilty and the judge will say the jury actually didn't interpret the law the right way and this person should be not guilty. So in rare cases, a judge can say that a person was guilty and now they're not guilty, but it can never be the opposite. If a jury finds you not guilty, you're always not guilty. Okay. Eighth Amendment deals with crime and punishment. So there can be no excessive fines. So let's say if you get caught jaywalking, the cop can't write you a jaywalking ticket and say, that'll be $10 million, because that would be an excessive fine for the crime. The fine has to match the crime. Same thing, there can be no cruel and unusual punishment. So if you get caught jaywalking, they can't say, we're going to cut off your feet, because that would be cruel and unusual. So punishments have to be either reasonable amount of jail time or a reasonable fine. You can't have anything that would be out of those norms. Last but not least, the Ninth Amendment is kind of a catch-all. So the purpose of the Bill of Rights is to guarantee rights of the citizens, because the rest of the Constitution says what are the powers that government has, and the Bill of Rights protects the rights of the citizenry. And the Ninth Amendment says any right that we didn't write down, any right not listed, still belongs to the people. So this is a really smart thing that the Founding Fathers did, just to make sure, hey, if we forgot anything or missed anything, any other rights, for example, like right to privacy, right to education, those things are still things that people are entitled to, even though we didn't mention everything. And then the 10th Amendment says any powers that weren't given to the federal government explicitly in the Constitution go to the states. So an example would be like any sort of licensing, like when you get your driver's license, that's not mentioned in here, but that goes to the states. If someone gets an education license or a medical license, the states handle how they're going to assign those to people. So those are your 10 amendments. What you're going to do now is you're going to go to Google Classroom. I've got a link waiting for you right there to play this Do I Have a Right game. When you click on the link, you need to do two very important things as you're getting ready for this. The first thing is you're going to click play right here, and you're going to play the game called Do I Have a Right? Now, when this pops up, it's going to ask you if you want to register. Yes, make sure you register so that way you can save your game. And it might take a while to load, but that's okay. You'll eventually get to a screen that looks like this. After you've registered, again, very important to register so you can save your game. When you click on a new game, I want you to, I had a save game there, so it's asking me if I want to ditch that. When you start a new game, click on the Bill of Rights edition, because the Bill of Rights edition will only focus on the first 10 amendments, which is what we're covering in class, what you're going to be tested on. The full edition goes through all 27 amendments, which is fun. You can do that in your own time, but we're just going to focus on the Bill of Rights edition. So go ahead and do that. Have fun. Make sure you register your game. Make sure you click the Bill of Rights edition, and enjoy the rest of class.